we know from the work we've already done that the value for money from different things we could do in different parts of the landscape is very different. So if we pick one thing and not another, it's going to make a big difference to the outcome. So it's really worthwhile taking some care and trying to marshal some evidence, doing a bit of analysis to try and choose which of the many things we could do are the ones we actually will do.
Particularly with economics, there were a number of questions as fire agencies, both rural and urban and land managers across Australia, were wrestling with the reduced funding and the questions that come from government in relation to how much money is committed to our emergency services and the activities they do. And a number of agencies at time to time had gone to a range of economic models to consider their submissions to relevant governments into support of their activities. But there wasn't a body of research which really looked what was the most appropriate economic models for emergency services, and particularly rural fires in dealing with bushfires across Australia.
What we set out to do was to really map out the range of economic approaches and, working with industry, map those to the different decision and management needs that people have. And that's that frame where you say, I put this question, what's helpful to use? I think one of the most interesting things that came out was casting forward to the changing assets out there in the landscape. But you start to think, well, where are we shifting our assets there? So where there's settlement expanding into the rural-urban interface, that's obviously of huge implications. But things like transport infrastructure, scattered unconventional mining infrastructure, and renewable energy infrastructure. These are really quite different assets that are going to totally change the risk profile of a lot of parts of Australia. The economic approach to that would be to go, well, you've got a $100 million photovoltaic array and a small village. We've changed the nature of how we think about what we need to defend. That actually creates some dilemmas in terms of, do we go to the most expensive asset and save that? Or do we, as we tend to do, put life and houses above everything else? And I think saving a life sometimes is absolutely economically irrational, but we should do it. So that's the hard point at the end is the dollars don't tell you what to do, but they can inform how you go about your business. I think the next phase is, and the David Pannell's projects and others have headed in this way already, is to start doing some quite carefully constructed cases, which then take us to the next step of understanding some of the trade-offs, some of the benefit-cost sort of ratios that come out of different management strategies.
We did two different case studies in the project, one in South Australia and one in New Zealand, and they were slightly different in their objectives. But in both cases, the common ground was that we were looking at strategies to try and reduce the probability of fire causing losses and weighing that up against the costs of implementing those practices. Some of the results we obtained were very clear-cut. So, for example, I think it's reasonably strongly the case that the prescribed burning results for New Zealand were very negative. It's very unlikely that they would be turned around by if we had better quality information. Whereas some of the prescribed burning results in South Australia were a bit line ball, and depending on what better information in future shows, the result could go either way. So I guess the value there is that we've done an initial analysis, we've identified that it could go either way, and it highlights that, well, there's a particular question about which it's worthwhile going and getting more information so that you can get more confidence in the result. And we can, we can advise people, well, what is the missing information? What further evidence is needed to give us a confidence about what the answers to these management questions really are.
What we've learnt through the CRC, I think, as an industry, is to actually seek out the research that supports our decision making across a whole range of activities, and the economic research, once again, people will seek out and collaborate to actually support those really key decisions and those big economic decisions and conundrums that come to organisations across Australia.
Fundamentally, fire management and emergency management can never be reduced to just a bottom line of dollars, because there are human lives, there are values in it. I think it makes it a more rigorous approach and a more transparent approach. But at the end of the day, it's a matter for professional and community and political judgment and values. But if some of those values are made more explicit and transparent, then there's better decisions at the end of it.